This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are two reporters based in Syracuse with a baseball podcast. We're here to talk to you about the Metsies. Are they back? The Little League Classic and beyond. Hello, Ashley. How are you doing?
Hello. Good. The Mets showed signs of life this week, although I will say our standards in that area have shifted a little bit based on what we were dealing with before. But last week, it was rock bottom. It's all over. This week, at the end of this week, we did see some flashes of hope. They are still 5 games back in the NL East, but we'll get into that in a moment. Sort of the room they have there in the division in the next couple of weeks. And they still own the third NL wild card. They're a game and a half up on the Reds, 4 games back from the Cubs, 3 behind the Padres. I'll say it once. I said it once. I'll say it again. I'm not interested in the third NL wild card, but it's a playoff spot for now.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it comes down to. I don't think it's where you want to be, but I also think there are going to be opportunities to make up some of that ground. There is a series against the Phillies coming up. The Mets can work through that. They went 500 this week. Ashley says she would consider that a success.
With where we were at, I'll consider it a pulse.
I understand. Lost 2 of 3 to the Braves. Ashley says that's inexcusable. I say that's what always happens. 1, 2 out of 3 from the Mariners. So let's talk about that. Mets blow a lead on Friday night. They lost 11-9 to Seattle. I got to say something. 9 runs should be enough to win a baseball game.
You might think. But then you meet the New York Mets and their disaster class of a bullpen.
Step right
and
up
you might
and beat the Mets.
You might change your mind. Let's get the bad out of the way first, as did the Mets against Seattle. There are a lot of contenders for worst loss of the year this season. There's a lot. They just come to mind right off the bat. I can pick out about 4 or 5. They really just keep outdoing themselves, and I do mean that in the worst way possible. They were up 6-4. Lindor had homered twice. Soto hit a home run before the bullpen disaster class started. Ryan Helsley, he has not been as advertised. He has, in fact, not been very good. He got 1 out. He gave up 2 runs. Brooks Raley came in. He got 1 out, gave up 3 runs. Nobody can get outs. Nobody can, save anybody from crossing the plate. By the time it was all said and done, all you need to know is that the Mets lost 11-6, in large part due to Helsley and Raley and their bullpen. Helsley, like I'm mentioning, since joining the Mets, is 0-3 with a 4.82 ERA in 11 games, which is not very good.
I hold out hope that we haven't seen the best of him. Honestly, historically speaking, he actually is a good pitcher. I think that a lot of pitchers who are good pitchers come to the Mets and they're just bad for a second. I don't know why
They see New
happens.
York and they're like, never mind.
But honestly, a part of me actually felt like it could be a classic case of that. They've been showing his music and they got the flames in the background. I almost think maybe we just ditch all that. Let's just let the guy jog out onto the field and do a good job. It might just be too much pressure right now.
Let's just get back to business. You know what I mean? The light show can wait.
Enough of that.
But yeah, bullpen, we'll talk about the bullpen. It's a mess as it always is. But this was a bad loss. To me, first of all, you want to talk about 9 runs should be enough to win a baseball game. It should be. Second of all, you have one of your quote unquote aces, who he really hasn't been, Sean Manaea out there. He doesn't have his best stuff. He gives up 4 runs. Okay, but you score 6, right? You have a lead in there. You're supposed to be able to protect a lead. When you score 6 runs, Manaea's on the mound. You're supposed to be able to win those games. And after the fact, Carlos Mendoza honestly was nearing his breaking point, which you may, I feel like that's deserved with where they were after that loss. And he said, I haven't seen anything like this. Basically, I don't know what's going on, because the Mets at that point had blown 11 leads in 7 games. I mean, that is hard to do. I had to double check that stat. More blown leads than games.
It was so bad that it was getting impressive. And I actually like that Mendoza quote a lot. I haven't seen anything like this. That's real.
Improbable.
That's real.
Improbable.
I mean, he's talking like a fan. He's like, I'm just as upset as you are. Not so sure how to fix it at this time. Is it bad luck at that point? Is it heart? Is it hustle? I don't even know what you chalk that up to. That's how bad it is. I don't know what to say on that, but I actually do think, just because of how bad and how improbable it really was, that you just knew at some point inevitably they'd have to come out of that.
Yeah, Mendoza was hoodwinked and led astray, but bamboozled, hoodwinked. But also, like, I think it's obviously all come down to the pitching. So then that brings us to our next point when our new Lord and Savior arrived. And I do hate to anoint him that because you know that's only going to bring bad things. But I mean, you want to talk about desperation on the line. Get Nolan McLean on a plane.
And they did. And I'm so grateful they did because the Mets won 3-1. And he really, he impressed in a big, big way. We're going to get to some of the, stats and whatever in a minute. But he just looked so cool, calm, and collected for that to be, his first time pitching in a major league ball game. There was a time, and I forget, someone will tell me, hopefully James Buckley, it was like the third inning maybe, or I don't know, might have been the third inning, but he got into like big trouble. The bases were loaded.
Sure.
I think there was one out.
I know what you're talking
and
about.
That's when he got a couple of really, really nice calls from the ump, quite honestly.
The double play,
then he gets the double play. He was really finding ways to get out of trouble, and it could have been the sort of thing where in that second or third inning, whenever that happened, like they could have yanked him, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Instead, he has this remarkable start, 5.1 innings pitched, and actually people were annoyed and thought he should have pitched longer, and I actually think I agree. 0 earned runs, 2 hits, 4 walks, 8 strikeouts. Couple of walks, okay. But my God, was he showing all kinds of diversity in his pitches, all these different skills, and also he wasn't afraid to field the ball. That's not something that I feel like Mets pitchers normally have on their side. I think Kodai Senga, great pitcher, doesn't seem overwhelmingly athletic to me. And I feel that way about a couple of them, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Not this guy.
Yeah, and honestly, that's because he used to be a two-way player at Oklahoma State. He was like a position player. I believe was a shortstop for a long time till he joined the Mets, and the Mets turned him into just a starter. Nolan McLean has not been solely a starting pitcher for very long. It's been under 2 years, I believe, since he was drafted. Yeah, he really, there's no other term for it. He dazzled. He truly, he looked phenomenal. His off-speed stuff, his curveball, first of all, we haven't seen a Mets pitcher with stuff like that in, dare I say, olden times. We're talking Jacob deGrom, Matt Harvey, Max Scherzer times, for instance.
That thing was a Frisbee.
The off-speed stuff, the movement of his pitches, you were watching the game, and, I even think for casual fans, something clicked very quickly that, okay, his pitches are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing.
This is art.
Yeah.
This is really fancy, cool, unique stuff. And even, honestly, it was a good job by everyone. I feel like there was a moment where the pitching coach went out at exactly the right time and said, hey, you need to throw your fastball more, and he did, and that was great too. There really wasn't a pitch out there that I wasn't impressed by.
Yeah.
He had quite the arsenal.
And honestly, I think you called him cool, calm, and collected. I spoke with him right before he left Syracuse. It ended up being right before he left Syracuse, literally 4 days before he got called up. And that was my impression of him as well. You knew the pressure was mounting. You knew that call was about to come. And he was just I don't know, I go about my business. He's like a kid from North Carolina. Then they're interviewing his parents in the stands, his mom and dad. And Steve, God bless Steve Gelbs, is like, hey, Dad, what did Nolan say to you last night, before this start? Is he excited? And his dad's like, yeah, all he said was he had 2 really good cuts of steak. He had 2 steaks. He's pretty excited about being in the majors. I'm happy for Nolan McLean and his steak, honestly.
I will not forget that. He said he had Wagyu steak twice.
Yeah, right.
And I knew that he was going to be okay. I was like, that is just a really nice family from the South.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It was so calm and casual. He was like, honestly, the dad this is. He's like, I really didn't speak to him much last night. I, texted him today, just said, let me know when you get there. I'm like, that, and that's just it.
Right. Business as usual.
The dad actually in a lot of the cutaway shots was sitting down.
I know.
He wasn't even standing.
I know.
But honestly, I like that. I felt like everybody stayed calm, cool, and collected. It made him feel the same way. He got through it. What I will say is going forward, I absolutely think he should continue to be in the rotation. That feels obvious to me.
Yeah, and he will be. Carlos Mendoza said after the fact that for now he will continue to be. I'd be surprised if he wasn't the rest of the season.
Good.
And I was just comparing him before to Matt Harvey and Jacob deGrom and all those guys. Here is an actual stat to back that up. Mets pitchers to win their big league debut with 0 runs allowed and 8 or more strikeouts. Matt Harvey, and Nolan McLean. And that is the entire list. We're talking about that curveball. He had like spin rates on that thing that were like the best in the majors. Charlie Morton led him before that, and then he surpassed that. So it was just fantastic. It was a fantastic first start. I'm sure there will be some growing pains, especially because he is getting thrown into this at the worst possible time. But it was a good thing to see. Of course, right, the negative Mets fan part in your head, it wonders if this is too little, too late, right? The Mets now are 5 games behind the division, all of that. But it was good to see him handle the pressure, maybe more than anything else, maybe more than even the pitching, right? Because his call-up actually goes against what David Stearns has preached and preached throughout his tenure with the Mets. David Stearns' whole thing with McLean and Sproat and other guys last year has always been like, I don't want to call up a top prospect, you know, to throw them in the middle of either a race or a bad time. I don't want to anoint them as the savior. I don't want to call them up out of team need and team desperation. But that's exactly what they did with McLean, and he handled it really well.
And there are really 2 ways that goes, right? It could either kill a player's confidence or you end up feeling like the hero. And think about the upside to that if it goes well. It's almost like Mets fans and even Mets decision makers just can't think that way.
Yeah.
But this was really the epitome of what it feels like when that happens, when things go right, when it works out for a young prospect, so I'm happy for him. And this is just a little a heat tweet, I should say, from Laura Albanese, who, by the way, if you guys aren't following her yet, you're already too late, and you should really get on that wagon right now. She is a writer. She covers the Mets, and she's really just a great writer and I think a great journalist.
A friend of the program.
An absolute friend of the program. She said, amid an unending sea of disappointment, even an unending sea, I'm going to put that in my vernacular, an unending sea of disappointment. I can think about a few things that I feel that way about. Sorry, the 24-year-old making his MLB debut with the Mets did the improbable. Tasked with being the stopper, he didn't disappoint. I mean,
that's a beautiful picture to paint.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And that's what he was. He was a painter. He was an artist. That's just what he did out there.
It was improbable. It was maybe even impossible, but he lived up to the expectations, at least in start 1.
All right, let's move on for now, but let us know what you guys thought about McLean. Do you think he can keep up that pace or anything close to it? The Mets win 7-3 over the Mariners at the Little League Classic. Ashley thinks it was a delightful night had by all. At least that's what it says in her notes. Clay Holmes, 5 innings of 1-run ball, 5 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. Vientos has a 3-run homer. Alvarez RBI double. Lindor RBI double. Are the Mets back? Is the pitching back? Is everyone eating?
Listen, I mean, the Mets won 2 in a row for the first time the Mets won a series for the first time in 3 weeks. Let's just put that on everyone's radar.
They're back.
3 crisp weeks.
They're back.
But the Little League World Series, yeah, what a delightful time. So the Mets, obviously one of 2 teams to be chosen to go play 1 game at the Little League World Series, which is ongoing for the next few weeks. The Mets, Seattle, I thought the Mets were a great choice. Honestly, I just feel like a lot of the players on that team have heritage with teams that were there. You saw the Venezuelan team was from the same exact hometown in Venezuela as Carlos Mendoza. You saw, kids from like Panama with Acuna, Dominican Republic. So you just saw a lot there that was really nice and really a great experience for those little leaguers. My sister, so coincidentally, intern Allie, who you guys all met on this podcast, is now off from this internship to go do a week with the Little League World Series because they have a partnership with Penn State. Penn State, obviously not very far away from Williamsport. She's so covering it for them, and she was like on the tarmac as the Mets were getting off the plane, sending me videos, and it was delightful. So she was pulling double duty there, talked to Lindor, and it was a really awesome experience. All that to say is a lovely time. Clay Holmes pitched 5 innings of 1-run ball, like you said, and it does invoke, right? Getting back to the baseball side of things for a minute, Holmes and McLean, the 2 starts we saw from them this weekend, not lengthy. We've been talking about the length. That remains a problem, getting to the 6th inning. But when your pitching keeps you in a game like they did, you just have such an overwhelmingly better chance to win. When the Mets were a season-high 21 games over 500 on June 12th, they led the majors with a 2.8 ERA. Since June 13th, they have a 5.14 team ERA. That's the 3rd highest in the majors over that span. Only the Nationals and Rockies have been worse, and of course, that span is now 2 months long. So it starts and ends with the pitching.
That is crazy. That is one of the craziest collapses that I've ever seen.
Collapse.
That is a disaster class. That is disgusting. I just don't understand how that happened. How can you be so good and then so bad?
I don't know. It's
Baseball
truly
is an unforgiving sport, yo.
But also, it brings up the question, like, I don't want to keep squabbling about the past, but, like, high time for McLean and Sproat and Jonah Tong. Why were we dealing with this for 2 months? Why was the leash 2 months long? You know what I mean?
Sounds like you're trying to squabble.
I'm squabbling. And you know what else? Paul Blackburn's squabbling because he was sent to Siberia today. Let's give it up for Paul being sent to Siberia. The Mets released him.
Yeah. I mean, everyone I think knew that was coming, but it was time now. It was
Bye
time.
now, Paul.
Yeah, it was by Paul o'clock. Here's another thing that we need to discuss. We need to do it. Alvarez hurt. We're going to find out. Jammed his thumb when he was sliding into second base last night. Mets haven't said anything about it. But I'll tell you one thing, since his return from AAA, since his trip to Siberia, which he returned from.
Syracuse, Siberia. Siberia, Syracuse.
They both start with an S. In 21 games since returning from the minor leagues, he is hitting .323, .408, .645 with 6 doubles, a triple, 4 home runs, and 13 RBI with 20 hits and 14 runs scored. I mean, dang, that's the Alvarez of old.
Listen, his little trip to the 315, the Salt City, you might say, in some circles, might have cured him. He figured a few things out in the Salt City. No, but I should not be laughing because on a serious note, if Alvarez is hurt, that's a problem, right? He just starts hitting again. He just pieces a few things together, and he's your starting catcher. If he now jams his thumb, you know who needs their thumb more than about anybody else on a baseball team, except maybe the pitcher? The catcher, okay? Yeah. He needs his thumb. I don't know. We'll hope it's not broken. He stayed in the game last night, like, after it happened, but then they pulled him in, like, the next inning. They said he was getting x-rays on it today in New York. They haven't said anything. Obviously, it's an off day today, Monday, but I mean, that is, like, Alvarez out for the season, if it's broken, would be bad news.
Gut punch. Truly gut punch. Especially for him, man. I mean, I feel like he worked really, really hard, took some bad news, turned it into a positive, is now playing much better, is producing, is doing everything the Mets wanted him to do. Sports are unfair sometimes, and things like this happen, but it would be a blow that the Mets, I feel like, not only don't need right now, but I might go as far as to say can't afford.
That's the way the cookie crumbles, but, like, why does the cookie always have to crumble for the Mets? What if the cookie just stayed intact?
That's
you know what I mean?
literally such a good point.
Thank you.
What if it was just one full cookie that we could all enjoy and eat?
It's not what happens.
No, not since '86 at least. Okay, Lindor is also getting hot, and we're going to discuss that right now. Last 7 games, .483 average, 7 RBI, 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases. I've liked to see him in his little speed.
Yeah.
Ashley has here, as Lindor goes, the Mets go. I think that's always been true, hasn't it?
I think a large part of the disappointment this season, right? It's the pitching. We know it's the pitching. The pitching is the large problem, the elephant in the room, the bullpen. But Lindor, we can say it, has largely underperformed this year. Now, I'm not saying underperformed in comparison to last year, which is what was almost an MVP caliber season. He's just underperformed in terms of his career stats, his own standard, right? It has not been the Francisco Lindor that we've come to know and love, especially throughout June, July, and August. He was doing a little bit better at the plate at the beginning of the season. But he was named the NL Player of the Week. Really good to see him heating up because, as we know, Lindor goes, the Mets go. If Lindor heats up, the middle of that lineup is all of a sudden a lot more dangerous. So we will keep a pulse on that as we continue on throughout the rest of August. But the last little point that we wanted to make here, quite interesting. Now, I'm going to say something. Not often do I find something on an ESPN Sunday Night Baseball quite interesting, okay? We've established that. The Sunday Night Baseball broadcast leaves a lot to be desired in my eyes. I think a lot of other people feel the same. However, they had the commissioner, Rob Manfred, on as a guest last night. You know, the Little League World Series, Little League Classic, very good. The commissioner's there, great.
We got guests on.
The sun's setting.
Sure.
It's Pennsylvania. Then he just drops this little nugget. And as I was listening to it, because I was at work here doing the sportscast, putting the Mets in my sportscast, as I like to do, and as I was listening to it, it was one of those things where I was like, I wonder if, like, that's going to be big news. Like, you know when you hear something in real time and you're like, wow, that seems like it could really stir the pot.
You're like, I wonder if I'm going to look on Twitter and people are going to be freaking out.
Sure enough, I look on Twitter.
Super Division?
Literally. So Manfred starts talking about geographic realignment, which has been something that I guess has been on the horizon for a bit, but you always were sort of like, is this realistic? Is this actually going to happen? His quote to ESPN was, quote, "If we expand, it provides us with an opportunity to geographically realign. I think it would save a lot of wear and tear on our players. And I think our postseason format would be even more preferable for entities like ESPN," which he was speaking on, "because you'd be playing out of the East, out of the West." Now, first of all, I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of feelings about that. The postseason implications are even more interesting, right? Because not only are you going to change around the divisions, you're also going to change the postseason structure, which is important to a lot of people. But then, of course, the second point comes to your mind regarding the New York Mets and the East Coast, and that would quite literally mean that it would be the Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, and Phillies in a division. And let me just tell you something, that is a division that I really want no part of.
I actually was going to say, does that interest you or does that not interest you?
I mean, it's fun, like rivalry-wise. You just put together, right? The Mets and Yankees are huge rivals. The Red Sox and Yankees are huge rivals. The Mets and Phillies are huge rivals. The Yankees and Phillies played a World Series against each other not that long ago. Like rivalry-wise, it's a gold mine. In terms of the standings and the amount of wins it would take to win that division every year, that is lethal.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, listen, I do think as far as baseball is concerned, and like you said, the rivalries, it does interest me. I won't lie that it interests me, but even just forget about the Phillies and the Red Sox. Just the thought of having to go head to head with the Yankees. I don't want to do that. I like the fact that the Mets are in the National League and the Yankees are in the American League. And maybe that makes me a loser. Maybe that means that I'm not willing to fight or fight earlier. But I like the fact that if we were going to see them in the postseason, it would be in the World Series. And I think that'd be the most fun of all, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a really, really interesting thought, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. But just as far as what it means for the Mets, man, I wouldn't say it'd be setting them up for success.
No, I mean, expansion is something you think about in baseball. Like, I've never been against that. Get more cities involved. I know Nashville's been a talk for a while, maybe like Portland. Like, sure, add teams if you want. But I think when you mess with those divisions, and maybe I would eat these words in 10 years, I don't know. But like, when you mess with those divisions, you're also messing with other things, right? Like the Mets and the Braves has been a thing historically since the beginning of time in baseball, basically. The Mets and the Braves play 1,000 miles away from each other. So you would, I guess, grow the game in some senses, but you would also be losing some historical things that I think fans are attached to, for better or for worse.
You might gain some new young fans and lose some old fans.
Right.
You know, and I don't know what's exactly the better way to go. I mean, listen, a part of it, when you really think about baseball in general, is I think if you're somebody who's involved in baseball, you have to think a little bit about growing the game, which seems strange to say because for a while, right, I feel like it's like America's sport, America's pastime.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, most of the time, you know, ESPN and the national broadcasts, they don't always have baseball. They're really at this point, I feel a lot of the times, talking about football and basketball more than anything, some hockey. You don't really see any national programs talking about baseball. All I'm saying is I feel like an interesting way to grow the game could be something like geographical realignment. It could be something that, I don't know, even just for fans, you know, helping with the travel. And if they're going to, you know, play these teams more often, then maybe you're going to have more fans going to games. I'm not necessarily opposed to it for some of those reasons because I do think in some ways baseball is not, I mean, they've done some things to make great changes, right? The game's shorter now.
Yeah.
But I think there is still a little bit of a ways to go as far as getting new fans involved who weren't diehard fans their whole lives.
Yeah, no, I agree. We'll see what happens with it. We'll see. I mean, I think Manfred's not dumb, right? He's saying that last night on a broadcast that he knows is national, is on ESPN, is grabbing a lot of eyes just because of the Little League World Series and the fun of all that. So I think to even see him bring it up in the format that he brought it up in last night might mean that that's closer on the horizon, or at least closer on the horizon to being a discussion than anyone thinks. So we'll see what happens. As for the Mets, they're off tonight, like I said, and it is the NL East for the rest of August. I took a little gander at the schedule for the next 2 weeks down the stretch here. We got about 6 weeks left of the regular season. The Mets go to the Nationals for 3. They then go to the Braves for 3 more, and then it is the Phillies and Marlins at home next week. So the Mets need to gain some ground in the NL East. It's high time. You have about 13, 14 games in there straight against the NL East. And, of course, against the Phillies at your place, which I should add, they have a series in September against the Phillies, but it is in Philadelphia at Citizens Bank Park, and we all know how unforgiving that climate can be. So if you're the Mets, it is in your best interest to win now, win these next 2 weeks, because that's where you're gonna make some inroads in the division.
That's where you're going to make your money. Giddy up. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you back here when the next big thing happens. Thanks for joining us.